Okay, blessed be everyone. Welcome to another YouTube live stream. I'm just going to turn the light down a little bit. I've moved the light today just to try and get a different angle because it's I'm wearing glasses. I don't want to reflect them. So yes, welcome to another live stream. I hope everybody had a wonderful Imbolc up there in the Northern Hemisphere, and we had Lunasa down here, very, very hot, lots of mosquitoes, typical of Lunasa where I live. We've got a whole 6 weeks really of this season from, a harvesting perspective, and so really get into the season over the next 6 weeks until the next Sabbath comes along, which in the Northern Hemisphere will be your spring, which you'll probably be really relieved about, especially if you're really north. And we've got autumn coming here, which will cool things down a little bit, hopefully. So welcome, everybody. Today we're talking about spirituality and suffering, because that seems to be something that happens a lot when it comes to spirituality, and a lot of different spiritual traditions believe that suffering is necessary. Some of them even try to suffer more. There's all sorts of weird beliefs about suffering, and whether that's a good thing or whether that's a bad thing, and whether we should be trying to suffer more, or what it is. And I wanted to talk about it from a pagan point of view, particularly from a witchcraft or a Wiccan point of view, because we're really more pro being alive and pro joy in life and all of those sorts of good things. We're not pro suffering. So I wanted to talk a bit about that. So hello, everybody. Hi, Shane. Hi, Sandy. Hi, Moira. Yep, spring does sound good for you guys. Yeah, autumn is sounding pretty good for us. I love the heat, but we've had a couple of really, really hot, humid days here. So it has been good having air conditioning. Okay. Before we go on with that, though, for those of you who are new to the channel, welcome to the channel. You'll find on this channel topics on Wicca and witchcraft, shadow work, and tarot, as well as, of course, magic and spellcrafting. There's a lot of lives that I have now, and lots of videos on there, so you can go and have a look at the different playlists. There's playlists on spells and magic. There's playlists on being new to Wicca or just talking about Wicca and witchcraft, tarot. There's a whole shadow work playlist there, so if you really want to have a look at shadow work and how that applies to Wicca and witchcraft, or just how it applies to life in general and your happiness and joy in life, then go and have a look at that. If you want to know where to start your witchcraft practice, I have a free video. It's called How to Start Your Witchcraft Practice. There's a link in the description field below this video, and you can also go grab a free view of it on my website, mysterywitchschool.com. So that's called How to Start Your Witchcraft Practice, and it just gives you an idea of what sorts of things you might be doing in the first year of studying, more of an eclectic Wiccan form of witchcraft or more of a Western form of witchcraft, and how to pace yourself along the way. You don't have to learn everything at once. You don't want to learn everything at once. There's just too much to know. It's okay to slow down. It's okay to pace yourself and just start with the first thing and then the next thing and then the next thing over that 12-month period. Okay. Hi, Josie. And Maura. Oh, I already said hello to Maura. Helpful Natural. Awesome. Okay. So the topic today is about suffering, and I haven't written down any points about this. I just wanted to go free form. I would be interested to know, if you want to put it in the comments field or in the chat, what your feelings about the whole suffering thing is, maybe what you grew up with being told about suffering in regards to spirituality, because it would be good to get different people's points of view and see what where things are in common, or how people have felt that those beliefs about suffering have interfered with your life and maybe caused more suffering in your life than you would want. So if you want to put something in the comments field or something in the chat, go for it. There is also super chat and super thanks. So if you want to support the channel, that is awesome. Other ways to support the channel too, if you don't want to do it through YouTube, I have a PayPal me too. There's a link in the description field below this video for that as well. So I also grew up Catholic, helpful, natural. So that's probably why I'm doing this video. And the guilt over suffering is very real. And they really do know how to encourage suffering and how to make you feel guilty if you're not suffering. Um, there's a lot of, I might sort of talk a bit about the guilting and the shaming that goes on in some spiritual belief systems, about that you have to suffer in order to become a good person, or that you have to suffer in order to be able to reduce all of your karma from being bad in past lives and in present lives, that you have to suffer. And the more you suffer, the more God is going to favor you and let you into heaven, and all of these very strange things about suffering. And it's kind of curious to find out why these beliefs have come into our existence. One reason is probably because suffering does happen. We live in a 3D reality. It can be harsh. Things happen, and we feel pain, emotional pain, physical pain. Some really, really bad things can happen that can put us into a lot of suffering on an emotional level and on a physical level and mental level. And often we're looking for justification for why that is. And sometimes within religion, there can be justifications for it, like God's punishing you because you did such and such, or it's your karma. You've got bad karma because in your past life you did such and such. And so there's all of these reasons that we're trying to guess why we experience suffering in this life. And there are some religions that just really believe that you need to suffer in this life. It's if you're having too good a time in this life, then you're not going to get to the promised land, or you're not going to get to go to this heavenly realm, that you must suffer to be a good person, and that if there's other people suffering in the world, then you need to suffer too. Because if you're not suffering and someone else is suffering, then you're not a spiritual person, or you're not a caring person. There's all of these beliefs around suffering. So if you can relate to any of this, let me know in the comments field or in the chat whether you've got some of these beliefs there, that if you're having too good a time or you're not suffering, other people around you are, that there's a feeling that you've got to come down to that level, that you've got this sense of guilt about not having the suffering when other people do have the suffering. Okay, so I'll just go into some of the comments now. Okay. Okay, Grant made it. That's awesome. Oh, you're new to the channel. Awesome. Okay. So, look, recovering Catholics. Yes. Pisces stellium, we know all about it. Yes, Pisces do love to that. It's that emotional, and there's a bit of romanticism around suffering too. When you look at it, a lot of songs are about suffering, particularly love, suffering and love, poetry written about suffering. It kind of romances the idea of suffering, and we become addicted to it. We literally become addicted to our suffering. The chemicals running through our nervous system are addictive. So if we've grown up in an environment where we have suffered, or we've grown up in an environment where we have beliefs that have us continually suffering on an emotional level, then we're addicted to that suffering, that emotional suffering. And when we try to change the beliefs, and when we try to change that, it can be very, very difficult. There's a lot of resistance that comes from the body, that comes from the nervous system, that's coming from the program of suffering. And sometimes people even feel it's safer to suffer than to not suffer. There's beliefs that we can have about suffering where we feel that it's safer to remain in a negative mindset or a negative state, because if we dare to venture out and feel joy, something bad is going to happen. So it's better to be vigilant and to expect bad things to happen, or not allow ourselves to be able to really experience the joy, because if we do, then something bad's going to happen to ruin it. And that's something that we can have a belief system around, either coming from spiritual beliefs that, God doesn't want me to be happy. On my Sandra Inman tapping channel on YouTube, I've done tapping around this, because I found that I had this belief. Even though I'm a pagan and I don't believe in the Christian monotheistic God thing, there was still a belief in my system that the divine, outside of myself, even though I don't believe these things, my subconscious mind still believed it, that I can't have the success I want, or have what I wanted, because I need to suffer to get it. I need to prove that I'm good enough to get it, and it's only through the suffering that I can achieve it, which of course means that you're always going to suffer, because you're never going to be good enough. You're never going to feel that you've satisfied this divinity with enough of the suffering. And this is something that is often drilled into us as children from some of these spiritual beliefs that are in other religious traditions. And that can really stifle a person. It can cause you to go into a cycle of getting close to success, or even having success, and then going on a downward cycle. So it's like you're going up and down. You can't maintain that level of joy, or you can't maintain that level of achievement in things that you're wanting to do in your life. It could manifest financially, that you may have ups and downs, like significant ups and downs financially, that when things are starting to get good, all of a sudden something bad starts to happen and it goes back down again. There can be guilt around having success and having the things you want, because you feel that this divine thing, whatever it is that you grew up being told, is somehow going to punish you for having it too good. Those kinds of really, really crazy beliefs. So if anyone can relate to these. So I'm going to talk about the beliefs first before we talk about the more pagan understanding of spirituality, so that you can sort of see whether you've got these beliefs or not, and whether you can relate to them or not. These are beliefs that are coming from other spiritual traditions, and some of them have filtered into Wicca. Some of them have filtered into modern paganism too. There's a lot of Christian beliefs, New Age beliefs that have come from Eastern traditions that have filtered into Wicca, and I've heard them, and I wonder where they came from, because it doesn't sound like the Wicca I grew up with, like back in the back in the 90s, for example. So there's a lot of interesting beliefs that are starting to filter into even Wicca and witchcraft, regarding suffering and things like that. Okay. As children, we constantly heard the line that there are suffering, starving children around the world, so, eat your vegetables. So there's the guilt thing there. And the truth is, your suffering cannot help another person not suffer. So if you're if you find that somebody is suffering, by going into that suffering with them and feeling the pain they're feeling on an emotional level, feeling that you've got to be unhappy too in order to be a good spiritual person, is not helping either you or them. It's not helping at all. It just means that two people are now down in that well who can't get out of that well. If somebody is suffering, it's like they're at the bottom of a well and they need to get up out of that well. You can't jump down in the well with them in order to save them, unless there's a rope and there's somehow somebody else at the top being able to wind the rope up, okay, and take them up out of the well. You have to be a person who is able to not go down the well with the person you're trying to maybe help. If you want to help anybody, you have to be above that. So if somebody else is suffering around you, being a good spiritual person, to put it in, quotation marks, the word spiritual, if you really want to help the person, don't go down the well with them. Don't go down into the suffering with them. Bring them out of it. Give them tools, give them ways that they can get themselves out of the situation. There's no good you going down there with them, because it's just going to create more suffering, which is not what you're wanting. You're wanting to raise the vibe. You're wanting to help them get up out of the well. So you need to be out of the well to do that. But a lot of beliefs out there are basically saying that if you've got somebody around you who is suffering, then you can't be happy around them. You have to suffer with them, and that's just not helpful to anybody. Other beliefs about suffering can be more on a physical level, that somehow you've got to suffer physically with other people too. Because they're suffering, you've got to find a way of physically suffering as well, so that you're not demonstrating, maybe how healthy you are, or even on a financial level. There's guilt that can be around being financially secure and seeing other people around you who aren't. And often people will feel so guilty about that they'll actually stop their own financial progress, because they feel guilt and shame around having more financial resources than somebody else who doesn't. But once again, you being poor isn't going to help somebody else who's poor either. In fact, the more wealth a person has, the more they can actually help other people. So there's all of these twisted ways of thinking that have come out of a lot of the spiritual traditions, both East and West, that have us believing that we have to suffer, that to be good, kind people, we have to go down and suffer with everybody else. And so everybody just ends up suffering, and we end up with religions of suffering, religions of death, religions that think that life is just about suffering, and that when you die, if you've suffered enough, you'll get to go to heaven, and then that's when all the good stuff starts. From a magical point of view, and I love the way that Dion Fortune actually says this. She says that in the magical traditions, it's about life. We're pro-life, in the sense that we we believe that we're here to create something good here on planet Earth. We are here to create something wonderful, to build something wonderful. And all of the stuff that's happened that has created a lot of suffering and a lot of negativity for the last, lots of thousands of years, that we're at a time now when we can change that, when we can raise the vibe of the planet, and we can start to raise our consciousness and have less of all of that suffering. So we're pro joy. We're pro creating a good, happy life, to have the things that you want to have, to do the things that you want to do, that are very happy and very harmonious, and creating good for everyone around you as well as yourself. We're very pro that. We're not pro suffering at all. It's not a pagan belief that we have to suffer and deny ourselves things because we are on a spiritual path. Even, I mean, that's never been a belief in witchcraft at all, that whole thing about suffering. And I've even seen it come through in Wicca, where there's these beliefs, and I wonder if they got this off Charmed. I remember back the Charmed back in the 90s, the 90s version of Charmed, with the three sisters and how they weren't allowed to do magic for their own personal gain. I found that has even come through Wicca since then, that there's this beliefs that you can't do magic for money and prosperity, that you can't do magic for something that's actually going to be of benefit to you. Because for some reason it's bad to do that, and I don't even know where that belief came from. I'm assuming it came from Charmed. I don't know, but it's definitely never been a witchcraft or even a Wiccan belief that I've come across. Even back in the days when I first started out, there was not that belief that doing spells to improve your finances was a bad thing at all, and that it's somehow anti-Wiccan to want to have more financial resources. Uh, it doesn't make sense to me. Okay. Balderdash. The guilt is so real. I've been pestered by it my whole life, and my mum is still my strength in staying, getting through it. And it is. And it's important to work at ways of removing that belief that you have to suffer in life, that the divine wants you to suffer, because we've been programmed to believe it. And even if we're not in those religious traditions anymore, it's still in the subconscious mind. It's in a lot of the New Age movement, it's in a lot of the Eastern traditions. That have filtered through into the New Age movement. There's a lot of distorted belief around what karma is, even. And that has it's got a much more of a Western feel to it. It's this belief of reward and punishment. And karma is not about reward and punishment. It's simply what you're focused on happens. It comes to you. Whatever you're focusing on is what you create. Karma is very much like magic, except it's something that you take with you through from lifetime to lifetime. It's not reward and punishment. Nobody's punishing you. There's no one to punish you. There's no one to punish anybody. The universe doesn't care what is happening. It's about our free will to create and do, and we reap the rewards of that, or we reap the perils of that. It's how it is in this, particularly in this 3D reality. So if you do have any of those beliefs that you have to suffer, and it's a spiritual thing to do, really meditate on it, contemplate that. If you work with deities, is it really, do you really want to work with deities that you believe want you to suffer? The ones that I have worked with don't want that. They're in fact quite helpful to try and raise people out of that suffering and go beyond that suffering. So really look and see whether you've got those beliefs and where they came from and why you want to believe it, and how is it helping you or not helping you with those beliefs. Okay, sometimes you have to suffer to learn, to pay for your actions. So that's a belief. And sometimes you do have to fall into a hole in order to learn something, because it's the only way you're going to learn it. But the reality is you don't actually have to do that. You don't have to fall in the hole. But the ego being the ego, and because we're so programmed the way that we are, we often do create really difficult circumstances for ourselves. And sometimes that is the only way that we can learn. It's not because that's the only way you can learn. It's just simply sometimes it's the only way we can learn, because we're not ready to learn another way, or we haven't sort of woken up or matured enough to work out another way. So that is an aspect of, I guess, a lot of our suffering. And learning where the suffering's coming from is coming from our background and what we believe. And when we change our beliefs, we suffer a lot less. Even when bad things happen and we still suffer, we're not suffering as much or as long as people who haven't done that inner work may suffer, because we realize that we are the magical creators of our life. That's why we're into magic, because we want to be able to create a better world for ourselves and those around us. And that's why we do magic. We're doing magic to create. It's a creative thing. We're not doing magic to create suffering. We're doing magic to try and create the things we want to create. But this belief that we have to suffer in order to have success can often get in the way of our spells. So if you're doing spells for career, spells for money, spells for health even, there may even be beliefs that you may have picked up in your childhood around health, that you need to suffer health-wise for some reason. Either the divine wants you to suffer, or if you're not suffering, you're letting somebody else down. We can have loyalty vows to our parents, where we don't allow ourselves to get past a certain income level or a certain health level or relationship success, because a parent for some reason wasn't able to overcome those things, and we feel loyalty to that parent, and we feel guilt and shame if we go beyond that parent, for example. There's all of these very strange things that are going on in the subconscious mind that create the suffering for ourselves. So most of our suffering, most of it, not all of it, most of it is actually created by ourselves. And when we can take back our power, our thoughts, our beliefs, and critically think through all of the things that we're told in life, whether that's through religion or whether that's through political ideologies. We live in a very secular world now. So a lot of these beliefs that were once sort of the realms of religion have sort of become secular type religions, where the God is kind of an ideology that's more of an intellectual ideology rather than it being a thing. And so it's kind of like we've transferred from being spiritually oriented to being more ideologically oriented politically. And that can create more suffering and is creating a lot more suffering in the world. So being able to critical think for ourselves and to understand, what do I perceive, what do I believe, what do I want in my life, what do I really want, and having the courage to be able to stand in your truth. And if you do have any beliefs there that are telling you you have to suffer for spiritual reasons or political reasons, to change those beliefs, because they are not helping anybody at all. Okay, misery loves company. Yes, and it's an energy thing. I talked about energy signature a couple of lives ago, um, and how our vibration is created by our beliefs and our thoughts, and hence and then filters into our emotions, which filters into our behavior. And when we're giving off that suffering vibration, then we can attract more suffering or do things, behave in ways that actually create more suffering, that kind of thing. So suffering will also bring other people down around you. And you may also know that if there's other people around you who are very addicted to the suffering, addicted to their pain, you feel like you're going to go down there with them, and you can often be guilted into going down into that space with them, be guilted into having to somehow participate in their struggle, participate in their pain, when really participating in their struggle and pain is actually not helping them at all. It's actually just making it worse. Okay, we all have to pull our own weight. Spirit is like a vast surging ocean of infinite power. Yes. 8 locusts and wild honey. John the Baptist, 8 locusts and wild honey. Maybe they taste good together. Well, there's the self-flagellation. I think it was St. Dominic that used to sleep with rocks in his bed so that he wouldn't get a good night's sleep. There's a lot of incidents of Catholic monks, whipping themselves, flagellating themselves in order to suffer enough to get to heaven. So there's a lot of that crazy thing. TV is a super powerful. Yes, it is super powerful. That's why I don't watch it. Sounds like a setup to keep others in lack. Absolutely, it is a setup to keep everybody in lack so that the wealthy 1% can have everything, and we are basically slaves to their system, the worker bees, and they get everything, and we get very, very little. We get rewarded with, television and all of, having the best this and the best that we're always slaving away at something in order to have something. And any spiritual awakening or any spiritual realization is discouraged. And a lot of these religions that encourage the suffering have been created really by these people. And it's been going on a long time. I've seen a lot of modern post-2010 Wiccan books that say not to use the craft to gain for oneself, which seems weird since the 90s books had a lot of prosperity spells. Yes, they did. They did indeed. 2010. What happened in 2010 around that time? I don't know. I think Charmed had a lot to do with it. Does anyone think that Charmed might have had something to do with it? Because believe it or not, even though, television is, we know it's fiction, people just make it up and they create these things. Like, for example, using Charmed as an example, back in the 90s, the not being able to do stuff for personal gain was there to give it dramatic, to have more drama, to be able to create more drama. And that's what television's all about, creating drama. So you've got to put obstacles in the path of the people in the drama in order for them to be able to overcome, so that you've got an interesting plot. None of the stuff that Charmed was about was taken from real witchcraft or real Wicca at all. It was just the figment of somebody's imagination. And I wonder if people look at these television shows, and think that's actually what witchcraft really is, and that they're being told the truth somehow through these fictions. Because I really haven't, because I was practicing witchcraft. I started in the early 90s. And yes, there were lots of prosperity spells and money spells. And I think if you go into witchcraft from all cultures from around the world, there's prosperity spells, money spells, love spells. There's all of that stuff, and it's all for personal gain. And there's nothing wrong with personal gain, people. There is nothing wrong with it. If As long as you're not really harming other people or other things in the process, there is nothing wrong with having a happy life. And that's always been a magical part of magic, and it's always been a part of uh, of Wicca pre 2010, by the sounds of it. Okay. I think this all comes back to the problem of evil, which is something I've never seen a satisfactory answer to. Yes, the problem of evil. There's lots of theories about evil, and I don't know what the answer to that is either. I feel a lot of evil comes from humanity. It comes from our egos. It comes from the negative side of ourselves, the shadow side. It comes from a lack of connection to source, connection to to spirit. So I think evil comes from a disconnect to spirit of some sort. As to how that happened, or I don't know. I don't know the answer to that either. But it is there. It is there, and it's something that I know that some people say that ego doesn't exist from its own. Not ego, sorry. Evil doesn't exist from its own side. That it's something that is created by the ego or by our sense of lack, and so we get greed and selfishness and narcissism and all of these things which create the evil. I don't know what the answer to that is. Whether is it something that we create out of ignorance of our divinity, because we're all divine from a pagan point of view, we are divine, or there's so many religions will have stories about where evil came from, and who knows what's true. We do create our own power from within. The most powerful magic you can do is the inner work of changing any of the beliefs about yourself or the world around you that is hindering you in any way. And as you wake up more to the truth of who you are, you start to connect more and more and more to your higher self or your divine self. And you do start to see how everything is connected and how you can change and shape the world around you. But it comes from within. Magic comes from within. It's an inner power. It's not an external power. It comes from within. Had problems feeling guilty over being happen when some of my family make bad decisions that make them suffer. Yes, so often we feel bad for somebody. That again can come from the belief that feeling bad when somebody close to you is feeling bad is a way of showing love and a way of feeling love. So if you feel bad when somebody else is feeling bad, that can be empathy, of course. You're picking up on the sadness, and so you have empathy there for the sadness, so you will pick that up. But dwelling in it is not going to help you or them. So you pick up the empathic connection, then it's time to find ways to get out of the vibration of having to feel like you owe it to them to stay down there with them, because it's not going to help them. Okay, where was I? It just jumped up. Okay, over being happy. We do not have to suffer. Ignorance creates suffering. Yes, it does. It's just ignorance of who and what we truly are that creates it. And the ignorance comes from our upbringing, what we've been told, who and what we are. We're the smiths of our own destiny. Yes. I just thought of the goddess Breed then. Childhood trauma. Yep, that's what I'm working on in my shadow work. It is painful. Working on trauma it's kind of like an intentional suffering. Not because you're suffering because suffering is a good thing to do, but simply because it hurts. And so it's like facing that suffering and facing the pain. But the thing with emotional pain is that if you're doing healing work with it, it actually goes away. And you realize what it is, that it's actually just chemicals running through the nervous system. Charmed was very subtly messed up. It was indeed. It definitely was. We must be positive. We should think and speak positively, be grateful to the universe or God or everything, good or bad, because we're learning each day. Yeah, gratitude is incredibly helpful. To be grateful for all the things that are going right, that are feeling good, even if they're just little things. Being grateful for that. Even looking at the suffering as being a way to something better. So and trying to turn it into not suffering by seeing that, okay, it's a learning opportunity for me. It's a healing opportunity for me. It might be a way to go beyond whatever it is that you're struggling with. So utilizing it, I guess, and using it, but without the attachment to it, or without the belief that it has to be the way it is. It just simply is the way it is. I think evil is a way to not take accountability. Yes. TV, social media, news is really powerful. Absolutely. Totally powerful. Absolutely. We are suggestible beings, humans, and we are very, very easily manipulated as a herd. And we're very, very aware of people around us and how people perceive us, and we all want to be loved, and we all want to be liked, and we all want to be part of the group, and we don't want to act in any way that's going to ostracize us from the group or anything like that. So we can be very easily manipulated for those reasons. Where does the ego enter into this philosophy, though? Self-empowerment empowers the ego and those unwilling to do shadow work. Yeah, well, it can. Yeah, the ego certainly does enter into this philosophy, because the ego is the cause of our suffering. And our ego is programmed to think and be a certain way. It is a part of our survival mechanism, so we can't get rid of it. We can do the shadow work to integrate aspects of ourselves in a positive way, where the ego then starts to take a back seat to the higher self, and the ego ends up becoming I guess you could say, if you think of the ego like a dog, a dog is a good guardian, but you don't want the dog in control of your life. uh, Whereas your higher self, which is your self that's connected to all and everything, is really the one who should be running the show. But we've been taught to have the ego running the show, and the ego, being a dog, doesn't really know how to run the show at all. It's going to run around doing all sorts of really destructive things until you get more and more into your higher self and tame the ego like you would a dog, so that it's serving the higher self and not serving itself. You want to be the ego to do what it really should be doing, and it should just be keeping you safe. It should just be looking out for you, making sure you don't do things that are going to put your life in jeopardy. And your higher self is then the one running the show. but it's gone all screwed up, and somewhere along the line, our ego has taken over and it's running the show. So ego plays a very big part for it. If you don't do the shadow work, then yes, sometimes the ego can think it's the higher self, and we can go down a path where we're thinking that we're following the higher self, but it's actually the ego masquerading as the higher self. So there's sorts of traps that a lot of people can fall into doing self-empowerment work, for sure. Okay. Television for television. Okay. Even Augustine said evil does not truly exist because it is a privation of God. Yeah. Yeah. It's something that's created. It's created out of ignorance of who and what we truly are, very much. But we have it, or now, whether we like it or not, and so we have to deal with it. Don't forget to leave a girl a light. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Juniper. Real laughter is good for the immune system. Absolutely. Laughter yoga is great. Gratitude, yes, again. Thank you, Shane, for the super chat. We are supposed to create happiness while in not in death. Yes, we're trying to create something good here. And sometimes when we incarnate and we choose to incarnate, we may choose to incarnate into lives that are really challenging. And that's not because we have to suffer to pay for our sins. It's because for some reason we're wanting to create something in that environment with that particular group of people. For some reason, when we come into this existence, we come in with amnesia. And I wonder sometimes if that is part of, we're in some sort of a trap or something that we've got to try and work our way out of. There's a lot of theories as to why things are the way they are. I've certainly looked at them all and read a lot of them, but, I don't want to say what is and what isn't when I don't know for sure what is and what isn't. It's something we've kind of got to find ourselves and look for ourselves. And a lot of the time it's through working on ourselves and doing our own inner work, our own shadow work, that can help us understand more and more of what's going on outside of ourselves and what might be going on with humanity and all the struggles that we're continuously having over and over and over again. It's like the wheel keeps turning and we keep doing the same mistakes over and over and over again. And the same history repeats itself over and over and over again. And it's all the ego. Okay, everybody. Okay, so the takeaways from this is, yes, life is a mystery, for sure. The takeaway is, from a pagan viewpoint, suffering is not a requirement for enlightenment. It's not a requirement to be spiritual. It's something that happens. It's something we have to navigate. We don't really know why it exists in the way that it exists. Our own personal suffering is really all we can take care of. So where does our suffering come from? Our personal suffering. So when you're looking at it from a point of view of, well, I don't really know where the suffering outside in the world all originated from, if there is a demiurge, if there, are aliens, reptilians, or what the story might be. All you can do is look within yourself and see where you're suffering and heal that suffering within yourself. Because if every individual on this planet went inside and did the healing on themselves instead of worrying about what's going on out there, the world would be a very different place. So we have to think globally but act locally, and that acting locally is working on ourselves and our own suffering and transforming that through doing the shadow work, creating ways of being able to bring more joy into your life, and working on ourselves first. And then as we work on ourselves, that can then vibrationally carry on into, your family, into your friends, neighborhood, if every individual did that instead of trying to change the world externally, which which has never worked. We always have lots of people who are very, activists who are trying to force change on the outside world and causing themselves a lot of discomfort and suffering as a result of that. Whilst you still need an element of that to influence the outside world, the real work, the real activism is actually within ourselves. So we have to do the inner work before the outer can really change. So that inner work is really, really very important to us. And it's not because we have to suffer in order to be spiritual. It's just simply that we've got ourselves in a 3D world where suffering happens, and we're here to try and heal that and change that and transform that and bring into our lives all the good stuff and enjoy our lives and do all the magic you want for finance and prosperity, do all the magic you want to bring more love into your life, do all of the magic you want to bring in better health, to bring in all the good stuff. Because when you've got the good stuff, and if everybody else had the good stuff, then it would be a very, very, very different world. There's no need to limit ourselves from a magical point of view. Okay, we are the magic. Absolutely. We're divine beings. We are magical beings. We work with deities and we work with spirits. We don't worship them. We revere them. So we give reverence to them. But it's kind of a mutual respect that we have with the deities that we work with. They're not in charge of us. They're not in control of us. They're not punishing us. That's not our relationship with deities from a magical perspective. We work with them. You could think of them as other dimensional beings who can help us with guiding our path and doing the work that we're here to do in 3D. We're not, we don't subjugate to them or anything like that. It's not the pagan way. We work with them because they're in other dimensions. They have other ways of being able to help. And so we work with them because we're all divine beings working together. And so if there's any beliefs out there that are telling you that the pagan deities are, wanting you to worship them or anything like that in the same way that some of in other religions, it's not the way it is. Maybe they did that in the past. People may have done that in the past, certainly in the Greek times and maybe in Egyptian times. But we're not acknowledging our divinity and our divine source energy if we're worshipping other beings. We're not owning our divinity when we do that. We're succumbing to being basically slaves to a machine that's kept us like that for a very, very, very long time. And whether that's come from humans or it's come from aliens or wherever, we have to stop that and realize our own divinity, that we are divine source beings and that we work with other divine beings to be able to bring in better things into this 3D reality and try to raise the consciousness here of our species and also the planet as well. Okay, I think I disagree in that there is a place for suffering, but you're right that vast majority of spiritual belief in it is wrongly minded, especially in traditional faiths. Suffering does have its place because suffering happens. we can't deny that it's not happening. The best thing we can do is use it for healing, use it for trying to navigate a better way, trying to turn it into something that is actually useful, because otherwise we're just going to wallow in it and create more of it, if that makes sense. Not get attached to it, but acknowledge that it's there and to try and utilize it, because it can be a lesson that we're going in the wrong direction, that we fall into a hole, that we've dug our own hole, that we've done something out of ignorance, and therefore we suffer as a result. Not because it's spiritual to suffer or anything like that, just simply it's the result of an action that we've done. It's a result. like cause and effect. Okay, it's all connected to the cosmos. Even Thoth told them he is not there. They're God. Yes. I'm crocheting while listening. A long time ago, I started putting manifestation or gratitude chants into the stitches as I work. And it really is an amazing feeling as I do this. It's awesome. Yeah, it's like doing knot magic, really, isn't it? With crocheting or knitting, doing magic while you're weaving what the magic into what you're making. Awesome. Okay, everyone, have a wonderful week. I hope you enjoyed the video. Blessed be, and there will be another video next Monday, my time. I think it's Sunday for a lot of you. And is there anything else I need to tell you? I don't think there is. Yes, if there is one thing that I want to tell you, particularly those who are new, if you do want to learn Wicca and Witchcraft with me, like I have a 12-month course in Wicca and Witchcraft that is a practical course. So it actually gets you practicing the craft, gets you practicing energy work. There's a little bit of shadow work. There's a lot of meditations in there. Teaches you all about magic, particularly protection magic and prosperity magic, because they are basic magic. They're the fundamentals of life. Being safe and having what you need to survive, as in food on the table, rent, mortgage, whatever. They're fundamentals. Also working with various different deities and how to work with the deities as equals to the deities, working with them, and also working with the lunar energies as well as the Sabbats. All of that's contained within the Mystery Witch School 101 Academy. So there's a link to that in the description field below this video, and you can also find it on my courses tab on the website mysterywitchschool.com. And as I said, it's about practicing the craft rather than reading about it, or reading about it and then thinking, well, how do I practice it? And how should I practice it? It gets you into a regular habit of practicing every day, doing it and learning bit by bit every step of the way, so that you're adding every month, you're adding new practices on top of the ones that you did the month before, or tweaking them or changing them, so that you're getting a sense of connection to the craft. You're getting connection to yourself, your divine self, your magical self. And that connection is fundamental to practicing the craft. It's fundamental to your sense of divinity, and then having the strength to be able to move through any suffering that does come your way. You start to have more physical strength, more emotional strength, more mental strength, because you've been connecting to your spiritual self every day and working on energy work, learning how to work with energy, and doing all of that every day. So that's the Mystery Witch School 101 Academy. There's a link in the description field below this video for how you can go about looking at that. And I'm actually going to just pop a link, because I forgot to pop the link in earlier for the masterclass. Okay, so there's a link to the Mystery Witch School 101 Academy. Okay, not magic. Yes. Next time, could you explain your mentorship offerings? Okay, I will explain that. I'll just briefly do that, Maura. So there's a couple of different ways that you can work with me. One is through the Academy, the Mystery Witch School 101 course. So that gives you a course that you can do. You're doing that in your own time, but you also have access to me in that course to ask me questions. In that course, we get together twice a month to celebrate the new and full moons on Zoom. And you can also, ask questions and join in on the Zoom if you're able to come at that time. Otherwise, there's also a Facebook group as well that you can join to be part of the community. So that's one way, which is probably the most cost-effective way to do that. Otherwise, if you're wanting to work with me one-on-one, just flick me an email, sandra@mysterywitchschool.com. It depends on what you're wanting, like what you feel you need in your magical work, whether you're wanting help with the witchcraft side of it, or if you're wanting to do the shadow work side of it. I actually have a special program for shadow work, and that one is the one where you can book a free clarity session with me. It's a half hour over Zoom to have a chat to see what is going on with you, and you know, where you feel you need to do the shadow work. And then from then on, we go and do more of a coaching side of things. So it really depends on what you feel you need. Do you need mentoring with your witchcraft practice, or are you needing coaching with the shadow work side of things? So yeah, flick me an email, tell me exactly what it is that you feel you need, and I will let you know. Because I go through, sometimes with people, I'll help them with spell work. So we'll do a session working on maybe some spell work they're working on. They might have some questions. Some people just have a lot of questions that we can spend an hour on, just in a mentoring session with me, answering questions and just helping them maybe find the best way to do something that they're trying to do, whether it's a ritual or connecting with a deity. Anything that comes up in your witchcraft practice, basically, that you feel you need mentoring with, we can do. Okay, witchcraft and spell work. Okay, yeah. So we can certainly do that through mentoring. Yeah, flick me an email, Maura, and tell me a little bit more about what what you're what you might be struggling with, that you need some help with, and we can go from there. Okay, everyone, have a wonderful week. We will see you next week at the same time and the same place. So blessed be everyone.